So like I said, when I hop up there, just touch that.
Actually, I just learned of you, well, you just got your license relatively recently, right?
Yeah, I've been licensed since September of 22.
Okay, and you dove in head first.
You could say that, yes.
And then some, so. All right, so this is K2 EJT, Evan Thornton, and the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. So yeah, I'm Evan Thorson, K2 EJT. I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit tonight about kind of my journey into ham radio, how I got into CW, how I got into sort of field operations, things like that. I talk really. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
I'm just saying, recording?
Yes, we're.
Yeah, okay, good.
So I talk.
Because I don't hear it in the house.
You,
Do they hear his mic? Because I don't hear it.
They're picking me up through this. So I've got a mic for my camera. I'm getting picked up from that for that one. So I'm going to talk a little bit tonight about kind of my journey into how I got into this stuff and sort of why or how and why I got into the things I got into. I have a lot of show and tell stuff here. If anybody's got any questions, wants to play with anything, I've got all sorts of gear up here. So like I said, I'm Evan Thorson, K2EJT. I'm going to talk a little bit about CW and QRP tonight. So I lost my...
Evan, what does QRP stand for?
Low power. So generally speaking, we're talking 5 watts or less on CW and, thank you, sir. 5 watts or less on CW or 10 watts or less on like single sideband. So quick note on why my presentation is going to look so boring. So it's going to be black text on a white background, no pictures, no nothing. So I'm a teacher. All right, that's what I do for a living. I'm spoiling the next slide, but I've had other teachers look at presentations I used in class and they're like, this is the most boring presentation I've ever seen in my life. How do your students not fall asleep? And my answer to them is this. The presentation is not the star of the show. I am. This is there to keep me on track. Okay? So they make these big, colorful presentations with pictures and animations and all this garbage. Is the lesson any good? Right? So I don't know. It might be, it might not be, but I don't want you guys worried about what's there. I want you paying attention to me. Okay, so that's there for me. If you have questions about stuff that's on the screen, feel free to ask. But like I said, I'm using the presentation more as a tool for me to keep on topic because you will find that I get sidetracked very easy and I'll be off in left field in 5 seconds. So who am I? My name's Evan J. Thorson. I'm 50 years old. I'm married. I'm the father of a 16-year-old daughter. God help me. I've taught automotive technology at Broomtile Gaboses for the past 24 years. Okay, so I've been doing this a long time. I've been a professional auto technician for 30 years. So I'm a gearhead. I love cars, but I don't want to work on them. When you do anything for a living, it's the last thing you want to do, right? You get home, the last thing I want to do when I get home is work on cars. So I have all sorts of hobbies. I mean, it gets kind of ridiculous, the amount of things I'm into. And I'm one of those people that when I get into something, I will learn every little detail and minutia about it. Okay, so because of this, I have a lot of other hobbies. Like I said, way too many. Seriously, it gets ridiculous. If I was born in 2004 instead of 1974, I'd be the poster child for ADHD. I can't sit still. I can't focus on one thing for 5 seconds. It's just who I am. So how did it all begin? So I'm a fairly avid outdoorsman. I don't like to be inside all that much. It's just not my thing. I hike, I kayak, I mountain bike, as do my wife and my daughter, primarily my wife. Now, my daughter's 16, and 16-year-old girls in the woods, it's not their favorite thing. She loved it when she was like 10. So I originally bought some just cheap Motorola FRS radios so we could stay in touch when we were out doing outdoor stuff, right? We'd be out hiking, and they'd be off down at a creek. My daughter would be catching frogs or whatever, and I'd be walking around in the woods. And I wanted a way to stay in touch because a lot of times I'm in places where there's no cell service. So I bought some cheap, they weren't cheap, they were Motorola's. It's not like they were junk, but they worked, but they kind of left a lot to be desired. You get limited range out of, 2 watts maximum, those dinky little fixed antennas. So I was looking for something that would work better, and I stumbled across GMRS. So WRUE 675, by the way, if you're a GMRS op. So GMRS did exactly what I wanted it to do. Right? It gave me extended range when I was out in the field. It gave me access to repeaters. I could share the license with my family. So like my extended family will go to Letchworth State Park for a week in the summer and camp. I can give a GMRS HT to my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, my brother-in-law, my sister-in-law, everybody in the family, and go, okay, you can use my call sign, and we can stay in contact because there's no cell service at Letchworth. So it's really good for that, right? It's good for that sort of, that use case it's perfect for. So GMRS gave me more power, right? You get up to 50 watts on a mobile radio. Now I can change antennas and put real antennas on the radio, and you're going to see that antennas are probably the most important part of the radio. It was perfect for that. But was it? It was, but what if there was a situation where everything was down, right? Like, if I'm out in the middle of nowhere, there's no cell service, I need to get out further than a couple of miles. I mean, you're talking a couple miles max on GMRS. I wanted a solution where I could get out past line of sight, right? The answer was no, I couldn't do that with GMRS, so I needed to find a different solution. So, ham radio has entered the chat. I realized amateur radio was probably the tool I was looking for, so I did some research, I got on the internet, which is the black hole of doom that it is, and I started looking at what was available and what the options were and what the capabilities were. It looked like it was kind of daunting to get into, right? Though, I mean, you know, you got to take a test. There's all this technical jargon. There's tons of math, all sorts of equipment, huge antennas, grouchy old men. The list went on and on, all right? So I was like, man, is this really the thing for me? Finally, I bit the bullet and started studying for my technician's license. I took my tech license exam here in September of 2022. That night, Keith, KD2PWB, did a presentation on POTA. So he stood up here and did exactly what I'm doing right now. And I was sitting right about where he is, and I went, man, this sounds cool. This is something that I want to do. All right, that intrigued me. We're mixing radio with my love of the outdoors and hiking and, you know, all that kind of stuff. I said, this might be exactly what I was looking for. So I knew I'd probably need to upgrade to general because my tech license wasn't going to cut the mustard. I mean, you can do POTA with a tech license, but it's a whole lot easier when you open up all the HF bands. So I took my general test on October 19th, 2022, and I immediately started playing with my new HF rig. I bought a G90. It's always a G90. Everybody buys a G90. That's like sort of the gateway drug into HF for most people because they're cheap and they work good. So I bought that G90, and then I built my first antenna. Right, because you get the radio, you go, okay, now I got to get this thing on the air. So how do I do that? So I built a simple 20 meter dipole. I took a BNC binding post, cut some speaker wire, trimmed it to length, got the SWR good, so I was pretty much in the middle of the band, started hunting parks. I'd string it up in my backyard, I'd set a folding table up in my backyard, and I'd start working parks. So it was fun hunting, but I really wanted to do an activation. Now, most people have mic fright. I don't know if you guys noticed, but I like to talk. Okay, so mic fright's not a thing for me. I'm not scared of getting on a mic and talking. Key fright's not a thing for me either. And so I wanted to get out and do an activation. So on October 28th, 2022, so like a week after I got my general license, I drove out to Sugar Hill State Forest, which is northwest of Watkins Glen. There's a fire tower there at the summit. I set up my dipole. I turned my G90 on. I didn't even know about spotting. I didn't know I could spot myself on the POTA website. I just like, I'm doing this. So I just got on and started calling CQ POTA. First answer back was Italy. That was it. I was hooked. I was like, whoa, Italy? The first call. That's it. I'm good. All right. So I knew the G90 had a ridiculous antenna tuner, so I decided I wanted to build a random wire antenna because I wanted to work bands other than 20 meters. I mean, 20 meters is great, but 20 meters isn't always great. Right? I wanted to be able to work some of the higher bands. I wanted to be able to work some NVIS stuff. So I decided I wanted to build a random wire antenna so I could take advantage of the ridiculously wide tuner in that G90. So I hopped on YouTube and I started watching videos, people building different random wires, and I stumbled across Thomas Witherspoon, K4SWL's channel. If you're not familiar with Thomas, Thomas is sort of the godfather of CW Parks on the Air YouTube videos. He gets pile-ups that blow my mind because everybody wants to work Thomas. And it's funny now because Thomas knows me now, so when I call him, he pulls my call out of the pile-up and calls me back by name. So like I said, I found that video from Thomas, and he made a speaker wire antenna and hopped on the air and banged out an activation in no time on 5 watts using Morse code? What? Who still uses Morse code? Like, come on, at that point it was what, 2022, 2023? 2022. Nobody uses Morse code in 2022. Samuel Morse and Alfred Vail, they're dead. It's not 1838 anymore. So who still uses Morse code? So I learned about it while studying for my license test, but I didn't really think anybody used it. I was like, okay, I need to do this for an academic sense for the test, but nobody uses this nonsense, do they? Oh, I was wrong. So that being said, Thomas breezed through that activation like it was nothing on a 12th of the power of a light bulb. That blew my mind. Little tiny radio, little tiny battery, piece of wire in a tree, pile-ups. Done in 10 minutes. And I was like, holy cow. Maybe there is something to this after all. So the next day, I was doom scrolling through YouTube, and I stumbled across a ham radio crash course video with Howard Bernstein, who's one of the 2 founders of the Long Island CW Club. And Howard basically bullied Josh into making his first CW contact live on his YouTube live stream. And that kind of piqued my interest. I went, okay, maybe I can do this. So I thought, what the heck, it's worth a shot. If I can't learn it, I can't learn it. No biggie, no skin off my back. Whatever, I can go back to phone and FT8. Hint, there's no going back. The cult of CW is real. Once you're a CW op, it's kind of weird. CW ops are like this group of people that, some of them are zealots to the point where they won't use any other mode. I am an equal opportunity ham. I'll use any radio, any mode, I don't care. If it works, it works. If it gets the job done, it gets the job done. Different tools for different things. But my passion is CW. And like I said, once you've become like a hardcore CW op, it's hard to do anything else. So, enter Long Island CW Club. I joined LICW on November 11th, 2022. So 2 months after I got my license, less than a month after I got my general. I took my first class on November 14th. At first, I was like, oh man, this is hard. I remember the first 3 letters I learned were LCD. LCD was easy. The next week, they added 3 more letters, and my brain started to explode. And I went, oh man, the more letters they add, the harder this gets. I'm not sure I can do this. So, I'm stubborn. I was like, I'm not quitting. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna figure out a way to learn this. So I just dove in head first. All right. And I started picking it up pretty quickly. Once I really put my nose to the grind and said, I'm going to do this, it just started clicking. All right, now, I'm gonna warn people that if you do decide to try to learn CW, or if you learned it before and are gonna try to relearn it, do not expect to pick it up as fast as some of us do. There are some of us, like myself, so this shirt, this is from my buddy, Forrest Stevenson, KI7QCF. He just started a business. He's got a fantastic YouTube channel. It's all CW, but Forrest just started this fine business. He's selling shirts and all sorts of stuff on his channel, but Forrest went from no code at all to like 35 words a minute a year. That's insane. Don't expect to do that, but from what I've learned, almost anybody can learn CW. So I started to learn pretty quickly. How quickly? So I had my first QSO with Nick, KD2CRG, who is now WN2G.
And a member of the club.
And a member of the club, on January 25th, 2023. So I went from no code at all on November 11th to on the air. And this wasn't a formulaic exchange, it was a rag chew. On January 25th, 2023. Now it was an ugly rag chew, but I was on the air. All right? I went from nothing to on the air in a little over 2 months. So my goal was to do a CW only POTA activation by the end of 2023. I set myself a goal. I said, and that's one of the things, if you're gonna try to do any of this stuff, set goals. And it should be a little lofty. Don't make it easy. Be like, so like my current goal is I wanna be able to rag chew at 35 words a minute. Just armchair head copy at 35 words a minute. I'm not quite there yet. I'll get there. But set a goal that's hard, right? Be like, I wanna achieve this, and then shoot for it, all right? So, I wanted to do a CW only POTA activation by the end of 2023. To say I beat that goal would be an understatement. So before I talk about that, let me talk just a little bit about the Long Island CW Club. So if you're gonna try to learn Morse code, there are a lot of ways to do it. All right, you've got all sorts of apps on the phone. There's all sorts of websites. If you're a self-starter and you think you can do this on your own, give it a shot. I know a lot of people who have learned Morse code by themselves. They hop on LCWO, which is Learn CW Online, or a Morse code app on their phone, and they learn it. I knew I needed a little bit of structure. All right, so I joined the Long Island CW Club. So there are 3 basic groups that do the teaching of Morse code. So you got the Long Island CW Club. We are the biggest Morse code training program on earth. All right, we have 6,580 members in all 50 states, 68 countries. We have 168 classes a week. All right, Your next option is CW Ops, CW Academy. So CW Ops is a group of CW operators where it's a club. You have to be a minimum of 25 words a minute proficient. Then you have to have QSOs with a number, I forget how many CW Ops operators, and then get voted in. They basically nominate you, and then people vote. You get voted in, assuming you meet their criteria. I'm a member of CW Ops. They run a class called CW Academy. I think it's 3 times a year. That one's a little more structured as far as when the times are. I'll talk about those in a second. The last one is CW Innovations. CW Innovations is a little bit different. That one, there's like an interview process. They're selective as to who they take. As we're a Long Island CW Club and CW Academy really aren't. If you join, they'll take you. CW Academy is free, but it is structured. It is, you meet this day at this time every week for, I think it's twice a week, for, I think it's 12 weeks or something like that. I forget the exact length. It's very structured. Long Island CW Club, you can go to any class you want, anytime you want. So if you look on the calendar, I'll show you what the calendar looks like. This is a little insane. So let's just look at the week. Like I said, we have a lot of classes, okay? So if you're trying to learn CW and you want flexible schedule, this is the way to go. It's $30 a year to join, or $90 for a lifetime membership. I'm not trying to push it. I'm just saying if that's something you think you might want to do and you want the flexibility, he's got to keep focusing on me. Thank you. He's my cameraman. If you think that's something you might want to do and you need the flexibility, this is probably your best option. The cool thing about LICW Club is it's a full-fledged ham club. So we don't just do CW. We do forums and speakers and all sorts of other stuff, just like any other club does. Okay, so it's not just CW classes. So go back to my boring presentation here. So I started learning Morse code. I said I want to do a CW. Sorry, dude. I said I want to do a CW activation by the end of 2023. So I hadn't done an activation yet, but I was hunting POTA and SOTA stations on CW, and that's a fairly easy way to get into it. It's a formulaic exchange. It's fairly easy. SOTA is a little easier only because I found the ops, at least in North America, are a little slower. The European guys go light speed. But the POTA guys have started getting faster. It used to be when I first started doing POTA, it was between 16 and 20 words a minute. Now, on the low end, you're going to see 16, but you'll see guys creeping up 26, 28 words a minute. Don't let that scare you. Like I said, it's a formulaic exchange, and once you learn what it is, it's pretty easy. So I had to learn the QSO protocol, learn what the various elements sounded like as complete sounds, not characters. One of the things you're going to find if you do Morse code is you start to learn things as complete sounds, not just the characters, but entire words. And we don't really use a lot of full language in CW. A lot of abbreviations, GM for good morning, for instance, or GL for good luck. A lot of it's abbreviations, and you learn what those sound like as complete sounds. So when you have a CW QSO, especially those formulaic ones, you don't have to think about it. It just happens in your head, just like you're listening to me talk right now. If I hopped on the air and listened to one of these, it would be no different than this right now. And that's one of the weird feelings. We're going to talk about that in a minute. So once I had that down, I shot a video about how to hunt POTA on CW, and I posted it on YouTube. It was just, I had a piece of paper. I said, and it wasn't like I was trying to start a great big YouTube channel. I just said, well, this might be useful for people who are looking to hunt CW. So I shot a video. I sat at my desk. I had a piece of paper with the QSO protocol on it, explained what it was, explained when to send things and what to listen for. And I figured a couple people would watch it. It might be helpful. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive. Thousands of people watched it. It was insane. Made a few more videos, got the same results. Said, okay, I'm just going to keep doing this. Then I made a promise to the audience. I said, I will film my very first POTA CW activation and put it on YouTube. I'd never done one before. That was nerve-wracking, but I made that. I told everybody, if I do this, I'll put the whole thing beginning to end, mistakes and all, no editing, on my channel. You guys can see what it's like for real. And on April 12, 2023, I did exactly that. I had 32 QSOs logged in 42 minutes. It was basically one big, huge pileup from beginning to end. I got on 40 meters, started calling CQ POTA, and it just piled on me. And it was chaos for 42 minutes, and it was awesome. When I was done, I was spent. My brain was fried. I couldn't do anything else, but I was like, this is amazing. Like I said, and the rest is history. The channel's become fairly successful. I've got about 15,000 subscribers. I enjoy helping other people learn some of this stuff. It can be daunting as a new operator. So he said he's watched some of my videos before. In fact, he stumbled upon the channel, and when I started a video at Round Top Park, he was like, "Wait, what? Round Top Park?" I've done a lot of videos. My channel's kind of branched out. Originally, it was just CW stuff, and it's branched out a little bit from there, and we'll talk about that in a second. So my channel, I've got a lot. If you go on my channel, I've got a lot of videos on this channel. And the funny thing is, my most viewed videos have nothing to do with Morse code. They have to do with radio for emergency preparedness, all right? I forget if I have a slide about this or not. Basically in fact, I think I do, but basically what happened was, after Hurricane Helene hit North Carolina, I listened to that Mount Mitchell repeater the whole week. I was glued to it. I couldn't stop listening to it. And then passing traffic. I had my HF rig on their 40 meter net. I was listening to pass health and welfare traffic into the VHF net. They'd call into the VHF net over the repeater. They'd say, hey, can you go check on Jimmy, who's at 123 4th Street, Nashville? Nobody's heard from him in a week. And they'd find a ham or somebody who was local. They'd go down and check on him. They'd come back, say, yeah, he's fine. And then that would go back out over the HF net. It was really cool to listen to. But a lot of people had no means of communication. Everybody assumes the cell network's always going to be up. Everybody assumes satellite's always going to work, all right? Everybody assumes those fiber optic cables that are buried in the ground aren't going to get cut by landslides until they do. And people started to realize there were all sorts of unlicensed people on Balfangs calling into that net and saying, hey, we're stuck, we need help. And not once did I hear the net control operator, Dan, say, hey, get off the air, you're not licensed. This is a legit emergency. Now, if you're hopping on the repeater just to be a jackwagon or a lid, okay, that's one thing. But when you're stuck in the middle of nowhere and your only means of communication is that $17 HT that's in your closet, use it. All right, so I shot a video, this one right here, Radio for Preparedness, What Lessons Can We Learn from Hurricane Helene? Just about, what kind of things did we realize work and what don't, right? How important is VHF? How important was that repeater? That Mount Mitchell repeater was a lifesaver. That video went nuts. And so I went, okay, people want this. So I started shooting more videos on basic entry-level stuff. This video is how do you program a Baofeng? And I don't just go through the programming, I go through all of the bands and how propagation works and how, what frequencies to program in and where do you find those frequencies and how do you get your license? All that kind of stuff is in that video. That's got 175,000 views. People eat that stuff up. It's kind of funny, but my passion is still CW. So I'll put CW activation videos on my channel and they'll get 1,000 views. I'll put something on there with a Baofeng and it'll get 100,000 views. That's insane, but that's neither here nor there. So meanwhile, over at LICW, so Howard, like I said, he's one of the founders of Long Island CW Club. He saw my first YouTube video on hunting POTA and was impressed by how quickly I'd progressed. So I went from nothing to this in a matter of months. So he asked me if I'd be interested in becoming an instructor at Long Island CW Club, and I was like, well, yeah, sure, that'd be awesome. So over the next few months, I mentored with Eric Dahlman, K9 VIC, in the Beginner's Carousel program. So the way it works is there's the Beginner's Carousel, which is where you learn all your characters. So there's BC1. So we call it a carousel because there's no beginning point, no end point. You get on and off anytime you want. It's not like you have to wait for the next session to start. If you join tonight, you could be in class tomorrow, all right? So BC1, we teach the first 16 letters at 12 words a minute character speed, 8 words a minute effective speed. If you don't know what that means, CW speed is based on the word Paris, P-A-R-I-S, and how long it takes to send that word, all right? 12 words a minute is pretty slow. 8 words a minute is brutally slow. That effective speed, that 8 word a minute number, what we call Farnsworth, that's the time, the space in between the characters. When you get into Beginner's Carousel 2, you learn the rest of your letters, your numbers, some punctuation, and what are called prosigns. So if you're not familiar with prosigns, they are sounds that mean certain things. So for instance, SK means I'm done transmitting. AS means wait. And it's set as a single sound. It's not the letters A and S. It's AS all as one sound. So you learn your the rest of your letters, your numbers, the pro signs and punctuations in beginner's carousel 2, we ramp the speed up a little bit. It's still 12 words a minute character speed, but we shrink that effective speed. We start shrinking that space in between the characters to 10 words a minute. Then you go to beginner's carousel 3. In beginner's carousel 3, you learn the common formulaic QSO protocols, POTA, SOTA, SKCC, which is the Straight Key Century Club, which is awesome. K1 USN slow speed test, which is 20 words a minute or less. It's a little mini contest every week. Things like that to get you on the air in formulaic ways like Drew was talking about with Field Day, where it's the same exchange every time, right? Then the last thing you do before you move up is what we call the Long Island QSO protocol class, which is a sort of a basic rag chew at a straight 12 words a minute, because those kind of follow a format. Then you move into the intermediate program. That's where I teach. All right, so I teach in the intermediate program. The intermediate program is conversational CW. No formulaic stuff, it's this, talking back and forth. So when I run class, I sub for Eric, because funny thing is, my class is Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Eric's class, who was my mentor, he teaches the same thing, intermediate 2 now. His class is Monday nights at 8 p.m. His club meets on Mondays, and my club meets on Wednesdays. That's why I'm never here, because my class is running right now, and Eric's subbing for me. But in intermediate, it's conversational. So when I subbed for Eric on Monday, I did Jeopardy. We played Jeopardy. So I would send a word, and my students would send back a question. So I might send coffee cup, and then my students would send back, what is a vessel that I hold my coffee in that I spilled on my lap this morning? Things like that. We might tell jokes. We might tell stories. I might put a picture up on the screen and ask them questions and have them answer. We don't talk. It's done with a key. Now, we do talk in class, but all of the learning is done on the key. So I'm at 16 words a minute, conversational. So intermediate 1 is 12 words a minute, conversational. Intermediate 2 takes you to 16 words a minute, conversational. Intermediate 3 ramps up to 20 words a minute, conversational. Then you get into the advanced program. Advanced 1, 25 words a minute, conversational. Advanced 2, 30 words a minute. And then from there, it's our QRQ classes. We've got classes that are 50 words a minute plus. That just sounds like a string of zzz when you hear it. There's a kid in the club, I think he's from someplace in Eastern Europe. He did this at Hamvention, not this year, but last year. He can copy call signs at 217 words a minute. You cannot hear anything at that speed. It's just zzz, and he can copy them. It's insane. So I went from nothing to now I'm proficient in a conversational CW in the mid to high 20s, and for contest format stuff or formulaic stuff, about 35 words a minute. Like I said, I'm a member of CW Ops as well, which requires proficiency at a minimum of 25 words a minute. But that being said, speed is not everything. People make such a big deal out of speed. Oh, you got to be fast. No, you don't. You need to be accurate. I would much rather you were on the air at 12 words a minute with accurate CW and a good fist than a sloppy mess at 25 words a minute. Everybody gets so hung up on, I got to be faster. No, you don't. You need to be good. If you're on the air at 12 words a minute, you're on the air at 12 words a minute. There are thousands of QSOs going on at 12 words a minute right now. If I hopped on the reverse beacon network and filtered by speed, I could find somebody right now you could work at 12 words a minute all day long. Trying to find somebody to work at 35, whole different ballgame. All right. Like I said, a good fist and accurate Morse code trumps speed all day, every day, or so says this guy. That's actually a link to a video I shot about why speed doesn't matter. So, like I said, if you do decide to do this, don't get intimidated. If you decide to get into CW, if you don't, awesome. But if you do, don't get intimidated by speed. Good ops will slow down to match you. So normally when I do POTA or SOTA, I'm going about 24 words a minute. If you call me at 10 words a minute, I'm going to turn my key speed down to 10 words a minute. I'm going to match you, or I'm going to approximate as close as I can. I'm pretty good at guessing about how fast you're going, and I'll turn the key speed right back down, and I'll answer you at the speed you're going. And I don't care how long it takes you. It's the coolest thing is when you're somebody's first CW contact. That is awesome. Or when I get a new op, I can tell they're new. The fist is a little shaky, they're going a little slow, it's a little tentative. I'm patient. I'll give you as much time as you need because I want to work those new folks. That's awesome. When I work somebody new, it's a great feeling. It's even cooler when I work one of my former students who's now on the air. That's a cool feeling. So, go. So, Lots of POTA, SOTA contests, and thousands of CW QSOs later. So since I started doing CW, I've probably operated about 90% of the time on that mode. I do a little phone and digital, but the vast majority of my QSOs are CW. So CW is like cheat mode. It gets through when other modes won't. Okay, fine, FT8, you win this one. But the QSO rate can be kept very high. Unlike FT8. What's it take, 2 minutes for an FT8 contact because it's 15-second transmissions? In 2 minutes, if I'm doing a contest, I can probably work, I can probably work 10 to 15 stations in the same time you can make one contact on FT8. If I'm going 35 words a minute, it's bang, I gotta pile up and it's bang, 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 bang. I can just slam through them 4, 5, 6 a minute. All right? If I'm going 20 words a minute, it's probably 2 or 3. But at 35, if I've got somebody on the other end who's just as fast and they can copy as fast as I can, easily 4, 5, 6 a minute. So I can keep that QSO rate cranked up high. So like you look at field day, you want to get points, get a whole bunch of CW operators on all the bands and just rack the points up because you'll have the QSO rate will be through the roof. The contacts are worth twice as much, right? So there's some benefits to that. Like I said, you can use tiny amounts of power to get the job done. All right, FT8, we'll call it a draw, and no whisper, you can't play. But I can work the world on 5 watts, right? Because I'm using tiny slivers of bandwidth. It's super efficient. Unlike phone, where you've got a big wide signal that takes a lot of power to get all of that across. I'm a single tone, I'm making beeps, right? Not to knock phone, I do phone too, all right? But CW is super, super efficient. I can, like I said, I've worked China from the woods on a piece of wire in a tree on 5 watts. All right. So I've gotten to the point where I hear CW as complete words. Who am I kidding? I hear CW in my sleep. And no, that's not kidding. I'll wake up, I'll have had a dream, and it'll be in Morse code. It's weird because you get to the point where you don't hear characters anymore. It just sounds like conversation. Like if I say R, the letter R, your brain doesn't have to think about what R is. You know what R is. You know what it looks like. You know what it sounds like. You know what it sounds like in a word. If you said did-dot it to me, which is R, that is R. It's not did-dot it. If you say that to me, my brain says R. The first time I ever experienced that, I was backing up a customer's car in my shop, and they had a backup. They had a parking sensor in that car that would beep at you when you got close to an object. So I was backing up, and it went beep, beep, beep. And the third beep, it stopped because I stopped the car, and da-da-dit is G. And without thinking, my brain just said G. I was like, whoa, the car just said G to me. It was weird. But the first time you word copy a difficult word without any effort is bizarre. So I was just sitting listening to a rag chew. I was doing something else, and I had my radio on. It was on 40 meters, and it was at night. The band was long, and I wasn't paying any attention. It was just going in the background, and I heard the one op send his QTH was Albuquerque. My brain copied the word Albuquerque without any effort at all. I just heard it as the word Albuquerque, and I went, ooh, that's weird. And once that starts to happen, it's a very weird sensation because you go from really concentrating to what we call, when we teach this, especially with our advanced students, we call it loose focus. You'll find that when you practice, once you get better, it's actually better to not try to concentrate too hard. When I find, I don't really practice anymore, but when I was trying to get better, I did it in my truck on the way to work. I would listen to what's called Morse Code Ninja. If you're not familiar with Kurt's work, he's awesome. If you're trying to learn CW, he's got some great stuff that have thousands and thousands of lessons. But I would put that on in the truck and drive to work. My brain is concentrating on driving. My subconscious brain is copying CW with no effort whatsoever. And it's a really interesting feeling when that finally starts to happen. So, quick learn about learning Morse code. Learning Morse code is like learning a new language. Not only do you need to learn the characters, but you need to learn all of the abbreviations, the Q codes, the QSO protocols. You need to learn to copy different fists on different types of keys. Think accents on phone. If you try to work a foreign station and they're from Croatia or Italy or Russia or China or Japan, that really thick accent, you'll get guys who are on a mechanical key as opposed to paddles in a keyer. They're on a bug or a cootie or a straight key. And they get this very interesting sounding fist. They'll have accentuated, they'll send a R for Roger. It'll go did-dot it real fast. This sort of weird cadence, we call it swing. You have to learn how to copy through all those accents, all right? And it's a skill. Anybody can copy computer generated code. And I've had students fall into this this pit where they get really good at copying computer-generated code, and they get on the air, and they try to work somebody on a bug, and they fall apart. If you've never heard a bug, they are very weird sounding. I didn't bring a bug with me tonight, but if you're not familiar with a bug is a semi-automatic key, so it's mechanical. When you hit the dit side, it sends dits automatically using a pendulum, but the DAs are sent physically. You have to physically, manually make the DAs, and they have a very interesting cadence. They have a sort of a sing-song sound to them. Really good bug fists are hard to differentiate from a keyer. Most people aren't that good, and some people have that accentuated fist on purpose, because if I'm trying to break a pile up, that guy that sounds different than everybody else is the one that gets worked. So if I'm on a bug and I'm trying to work somebody and they're not answering me back, I'll really draw things out. My call sign on CW is very easy to pull out. It's da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da, dit-da-da-da-da-da. It's got a very interesting cadence, and it's very easy to pull out of a pileup. And if I'm on a bug, it's really easy to pull out of a pileup. They might have a hard time copying the rest of the QSO, but they're going to get me out of the pileup. So it takes practice. It can be difficult, but I've only had a few students out of hundreds who actually couldn't learn it. I can think of 2 or 3, and they all either had traumatic brain injuries or strokes. Everybody else who's tried to learn was able to learn. It might not have been easy for them. Like I said, not everybody learns at the same speed, okay? Not everybody's gonna pick it up immediately, but you can do it, all right? It's not insurmountable. The biggest thing I can tell you is get on the air before you think you're ready. That's scary. I was on the air before I knew all of my characters. I was almost through BC2 when I had that first QSO with Nick. It's funny because I worked Nick. Nick was doing a soda this past weekend. I don't know if you see all the bites on the backs of my arms. That's black flies. I was at the top of Balsam Lake Mountain. Nick was doing a soda one summit over. I worked him on 2 meters. And I was like, Nick, I'm like, you know, you were my first, because after I worked him, gave him the soda contact, he knew who I was. He said, hey, Evan, how you doing? And I said, you know, you were because I'd never talked to him on phone before. I said, you were my very first CW contact. So it was cool to work somebody who was my very first CW contact on phone on 2 meters. So, but like I said, get on the air before you think you're ready. Listen to actual QSOs, not just computer-generated code. Like I said, on the air, it's totally different. Because not only, even if they're both on keyers and they're sending perfect code, you've got QRM, QRN, QSB, all of these things you've got to deal with, and it makes copying a whole different ballgame. What I tell my students is get on the air and just spin the dial and listen. Find a QSO that you don't even need to be able to copy all of it, but can you pull out some letters? Cool. Just listen. Get used to what it sounds like. Human fists are different than computer-generated code. Like I said, all of those different things you got to deal with make copying real code on the air different than computer-generated code. So it's okay to use computer-generated code when you're first learning, but wean yourself off of it as soon as you can, because the sooner you start listening to real code on the air, the quicker you'll pick up all these weird idiosyncrasies that humans do. They'll have weird spacing, they'll have weird timing. Morse code is very specific, right? It's a DA is 3 dits long. The space in between elements is 1 dit long. The space in between characters is 3 dits long. The space in between words is 7 dits long. Perfect code has that measurement. Humans don't send like that, especially if they're on a mechanical key. If I'm producing the dits and DAs with a straight key or a bug or a cootie, it's gonna be different, and your brain has to learn how to differentiate all those things. It's, like I said, it's very akin to trying to listen to somebody with a different accent. So, I got a whole playlist on my YouTube channel on how to learn Morse code, and Forrest's channel is fantastic for learning Morse code. There's a guy, K9KJ, he's got a great series on his YouTube channel about how to learn the characters. Okay, but why QRP? Are you just a glutton for punishment? Like, what idiot goes out with a tiny little radio making no power and try to make contacts? Because people will tell you life is too short for QRP. It is if you're on phone, not on CW. So, size and weight. So, $20, $30, $40. This will work 20 meters, 30 meters, and 40 meters. This radio, this big.
I'm going to just come off of a share so that the people on the live stream can...
Of course.
For a second.
So, this is an MTR-3B. It's a 3-band HF transceiver, 20 meters, 30 meters, 40 meters. It's the size of a deck of cards. This is why QRP, and this is why CW QRP, because if I go from CW to an all-mode radio, I'll show you a small all-mode radio. So here's an Elecraft KX2. Here's the Mountain Topper. Which one do you want to carry? All right, so that's the power of CW, all right? That's why, size and weight. So this pack right here, I had set up, this is actually a pack I had set up for soda. I'm gonna be doing a soda in the next weekend or two, depending on what the weather does. I had this pack ready to go. This is the whole radio kit. And when I say this is an activation kit, if you just picked this Pelican case up and left the house, you don't need anything else. Radio, 2 keys, speaker, headphones, coax, 40-meter end-fed half-wave, all my logging stuff, throw line, throw bag, pencil, battery, all power cables, everything is in this little Pelican 1060. All right? So when you guys go out to do a POTA and you've got a station wagon full of junk, I got this. All right? I will work the world on this box. So this is the power of CW, because I can do that with a little tiny bit of power. You can do it on phone. You can definitely do it on FT8, but remember, if you're doing FT8, you're carrying either a computer, or if you've got you can do it on a phone now too with FT8CN, but you still, I mean, like I said, you're still gonna need a radio that's capable of doing that. Now a QMX, if anybody's familiar with the QMX, that started out as CW and digital. They've now added phone. That's not much bigger than this radio. It's a little bit bigger, but that will do phone and digital. But Drew, if you could pop back over to my thing real quick, just so I can keep track of what I'm talking about. Thank you, sir. Oh, go back one slide, if you could. Where's the clicker? There it is. I got it. Okay, so yeah, it can be a challenge, but look at how tiny these radios are, and they get much smaller. So like a rock might, they're fixed. They've got a crystal in it that works on like, you know, one frequency, but I mean, they're like this big. All right, they might only be a half a watt or less, but do I ever run more power? Absolutely. I've got an FTDX10 in my shack, which also sees field use, but not that often. A Yaesu FT891, which is a 100-watt radio, and then an FTX1 Optima on order. I wish I had it. It's coming tomorrow. If you guys aren't familiar with the FTX1, it's Yaesu's brand new radio. The head is, so here's a ICOM IC705. The head on the Yaesu FTX1 is very similar to the size of this 705. In the field version, it's actually narrower and a little bit taller and wider. But the Optima version, which I ordered, clips to a 100-watt amp. So you can run it QRP. It's 6 watts with the internal battery, 10 watts with external battery, or if you clip it on the amp, it's 100 watts. So yes, I absolutely do run more power sometimes. And like I said, I do phone, I do digital in the field. This 705 works great on all modes. You know, digital on this thing's a breeze. The audio on this thing's great. If you've ever used an ICOM 7300, the audio on this is very similar, both received and transmitted. They're not cheap, but they're nice. But that Yaesu, I'm kind of excited about it. Like I said, I was hoping it would be here today, but it's coming tomorrow. I wanted to bring it with me, but I keep a G90 in my truck all the time as my just-in-case rig. So my very first HF rig, it's in my truck right now in an Apache case with an antenna and a battery and a key and a mic, so I can just take that. If I want to go do whatever, I can just pull that case out of my truck and run. I keep that in a truck all the time. And a G90 is cheap. What are they, 400 bucks? Realistically, if that gets stolen or broken, it's 400 bucks. If somebody steals my 705, I'm gonna cry, because these are like 1,400 bucks. Or God help you, Elecraft. When I bought this, it wasn't that expensive now, but if you buy a KX2 shack in a box like this, they're approaching $2,000 now. KX3 is now, KX3 shack in a box is now over $3,000. These things have gotten ridiculous. As far as my favorite radios are concerned, right now for field use, my favorite all-mode radio is this KX2, just because this thing does everything. It's got an internal tuner that will blow your mind. It's got an internal speaker, internal battery, pin diode switching on CW, so there's no relays clacking at me. Good receiver, good filtering.
When you're out,
Yeah, no, go ahead.
POTA,
Yeah.
do you use just the speaker that's in there, or do you have headphones?
So if I'm recording a video, I run the speaker that's on the radio so people can hear me. If I'm out and I'm not recording a video, it depends. If I'm by myself, I prefer the speaker because I like to be able to hear my surroundings. If I'm someplace where there's other people, I throw headphones in because on CW, they hear nothing. They might hear the key clicking, right? They're not hearing the CW. They're not hearing me talk because it's all coming out of a key. It's a great question. I generally use the speaker, but not always. I've got a couple other radios up here. So my favorite current CW only radio is this little rig right here. This is a CFT1. So this radio is produced by a kid. His name is Jonathan, Cam4 CFT. He's like 24 years old. The kid's an RF engineer. He designed and built this radio himself. I beta tested this. There were 10 beta testers. We beta tested this radio, and this thing, this is a 5-band radio, so it's 40, 30, 20, 17, 15. It's a super het with crystal filters, so it sounds amazing. SDRs are great, but nothing beats a super het with crystal filters. This thing just sounds incredible. So this is my current favorite CW only radio. It's not the smallest. I mean, you can see this mountain topper is smaller. And I've got this is a MTR 4B, so this is a 4-band mountain topper right here. These are made by L&R Precision. All right, this radio gets a lot of use. I actually really like this 4-bander. This one's 80, 40, 30, 20. 80 is kind of useless in the field until it's not. Like when we're at the bottom of the solar cycle, 80 and 40 are gonna get a lot of use, right? Right now, 80 doesn't see much use at all. But this is a fantastic radio. They don't make this anymore, but this radio is great. I've got a couple other things up here I use quite often in the field. So if I think the weather's gonna be kind of lousy, I have a TX500. So these are built in Russia. Well, they were. Now, the ones we buy in the US now are made in the UAE because of the embargoes. This is the old ones. This one was made in Russia. This is a tank. This thing is a solid brick of billet aluminum, water resistant. This thing's bomb proof. You can probably stand on it. So if I think the weather's gonna be kind of crazy, I'll run this guy. And this is an all mode rig. So this will do 160 through 6, phone, digital, and CW. In the box here, I mean, I've got all the stuff, including a digi-rig to run digital modes and all that stuff in here as well. But I've got a lot of radios up here. There's other things that I bring out in the field a lot. So like, a lot of times I like to run like random wire antennas. So here's a 41-foot 9-to-1 random wire. I like to run random wires a lot on some of these radios that run a lot of bands. Because I can change bands real fast, right? So like, if I might start my activation at 40 and go 40, 30, 20, 17, 15, 12, 10. I might just work my way right up depending on what band conditions are like. That's much easier to do on a random wire. Is it as efficient? No. But not this past November, but the November before, with this antenna and this KX2, I was working all over Europe during a POTA activation at Oakley Corners. So, it works. I've got a lot of other antennas up here. So like I've got the tuners that I take out in the field. I've got 2. So this is an MTEC ZM2. This is a Z-Match tuner. Doesn't need batteries, right? You just dial in your capacitance. You can run, it's got BNCs if you're gonna run coax, or I can run wire directly to it. So I've got like so this is another 41-foot random wire with a 17-foot counterpoise that I can attach directly to those guys and run right off this tuner. This is an ATU 10. So this is an auto tuner. It's dinky. These are all QRP tuners. That ZM2 will handle like 15 watts. This will take 10. This is actually designed, it's got a jack in the back and it interfaces with the 705, so as soon as you hit the key or change bands, it tunes automatically, or if you hit the push to talk on the mic. This has got latching relays in it, so once it's tuned, even if it's off, it's still tuned. The people worry about these battery-powered tuners in the field because they're afraid the battery's gonna die. I've had this year, I've charged it 3 times. The battery in this thing lasts months, and it gets a lot of use. I have a lot of different antennas and stuff up here. So when it comes to field antennas, it depends on what I'm doing. If I'm going way out in the field, I'm carrying something small. So like here's another little 9-to-1 random wire. This one is an oddball. I forget what the dimensions are on this. I'm beta testing a couple of these antennas for a guy. These are really well made, but this is, I forget what the dimensions are, but it's odd. It's like 28 feet on the radiating element and 14 or 11 feet on the counterpoise. I forget what it is, it's odd, but it works. Little tiny antennas like that, or like on this Elecraft, I can do, so let me dig it out of the box here. This is an Elecraft AX2. That's 20 meters. No, I'm not kidding. And yes, it works. Is it compromised? Yeah, I've got a 4-foot radiating element. It's very, very compromised, but it works. All right, I can hook this to the radio. There's a little tripod, it goes at a 90-degree BNC. I've worked Switzerland on this antenna, all right, on 10 watts. So it works. Now, if band conditions are rough, you're not using something like this. If I'm worried about efficiency, I'm not running anything like this though. So, like I said, in this kit, I have this wire right here is a 40 meter end-fed half wave. I've got a 64-to-1 transformer in here. I have some 49-to-1s too. This one just happens to be a 64-to-1 in here. I'll show you what the antenna itself looks like. Let me just. So there's the whole thing. Yes, this is a spark plug antenna. All right, that's the whole antenna, and there's your radiating element. So it's, like I said, that's what, I got the power wire too. So that's a 40 meter end-fed half wave, so it'll do 40, 20, 15, 10. There's the transformer. That's the whole antenna, right? I've got coax in there also. I've got this guy right here. This is a link dipole I built. This is 40, 30, 20 link dipole. It weighs just about nothing. It's just a BNC binding post. And then I built the radiating elements, and they're just connected with spade connectors, and they've got strain relief on them. So I throw it up full length, that's 40 meters. If I unplug the first set of connectors, it's 30. Unplug the next set, it's 20. You don't have to drop the antenna, you just lower it, unplug the connectors, hoist it back up in the tree, and you're back on the air. So like I said, this is a 40, 30, 20 link dipole. I quite often use that with this radio because this radio is 40, 30, 20. All right, so it's hard to beat a dipole in the field. It's not as convenient, but man, do they work. All right.
How high up in the trees, or how you know?
As high as I can get it. Honestly, it's not. I found that it's not super important, especially on the higher bands. If you're on 40 meters and you're only 15 feet in the air, most of it's going to be NVIS. But even so, like at night, if that thing's 20 feet in the air on 40 meters at night, I'll be working Texas. I've got the antennas that I use the most when I'm not doing a hike up SOTA or a deep hike in POTA. I use a lot of verticals because they work and they're easy to set up. So that's just a 17-foot quarter wave vertical. So that'll work with, without a tuner, 20 meters and up. You just change the length of the whip to fully extended. It's resonant at the bottom of the 20 meter band. And then you can start shortening the whip to change your frequency. Obviously, if you're doing something like that, you're going to need something to make sure that your antenna is working correctly. I've got a rig expert, but I don't bring that out in the field. I'd rather lose a $50 nano VNA than a $500 rig expert. So this guy goes out with me. This allows me to tune the antennas up. You can see SWR, you can see inductance, capacitance, resistance. It gives you Smith charts for resistance, the whole nine right on this little thing. And it's, what does it weigh? Nothing. It's this big. It weighs nothing. They're about 50 bucks. So all I do is throw the antenna up, hook the coax up to this guy, I've got it already calibrated, and I've got the frequencies recorded in here. And I just put it on whatever band I want and just start shortening the whip up. Boom, we're good. Hop on the air. And you get to the point with on those verticals, you can tune one up. Now, I'm not talking about the coil loaded ones. We're just talking about a straight vertical in a matter of seconds. You boop, 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 done, on the air. Now, the coil loaded verticals, they're a whole different ball of wax. And I heard Ford the other day talking on the air to somebody about coil loaded verticals, and he was not wrong. They are fiddly. So this is a Wolf River Coil Silver Bolt 1000. So this guy, you've got your collar and then you've got your coil, and you move this collar up and down to change your frequency. I'm gonna give you a little tip on these, all right? Don't just move the collar up and down, all right? So it slides up and down on the wire, okay? Now I've got it really high up, so this was actually tuned for 40 meters because I was running the great big 17-foot whip on there, so you can see I've hardly got any coil in there at all. I also have, I'll talk about that more in a second, but I also have for that same antenna, so this is what they call their Sporty 40 coil. This guy is 40 meters only, so you put this under that 17-foot whip and it gives you 40 meters also. And then I have a little tap I've got a 3/8 connector on each end with a Anderson power pole. So if I want to go from 40 to 20, I just plug that in, it shorts across the coil. But these things, I'll give you a little tip if you're trying to dial these in. The Q is real high on these. All right, so you're gonna, when you look at your SWR plot on whatever antennalyzer you've got, it's gonna be boom, boom. All right, you have a real narrow band you can work in. Once you get it close, you just turn this collar ever so slightly, because think about this is a coil of wire, it's essentially threads. So you just turn it ever so slightly, and it moves up and down that coil ever so slightly, and you can get this thing dialed into your 1-to-1, but it's a little fiddly. You gotta really just mess with it just a little bit. The other coil-loaded vertical I've got here is this guy. This is called a Gable. This is a Gable GRA 7350. So this antenna, if you're looking for a small vertical that, believe it or not, works. So there's the coil, there's the whip. As it sits here, it will do 40 to 6. If I add this coil, it will do 80. All right, so that little antenna will do 80 meters to 6 meters, and it doesn't weigh anything. It goes on, you can put it on any tripod you want. The Gable makes a tripod for it, which is actually extremely nice. It's
Tuning is touchy on it though.
very, very touchy. When he says touchy, you move it a millimeter, and you're gone. Like, you're not even close anymore. You move it a hair. But this is the tripod that goes with that antenna, and it's extremely well built. These are made in Taiwan, but the guy who builds these, or the company that builds these, they make really good stuff. It's a really nice tripod, and it folds up very nice. It's very sturdy, and it's fairly light. But like Ford said, it is hair touchy. Like, you move it a tiny, tiny bit, and it's all out of whack. So if you're gonna run any of these verticals, especially these coil-loaded verticals, until you get the hang of it, be prepared to be frustrated. It takes a lot of fiddling to get them dialed in. Once you get the hang of it, it's not too bad. This one's got a little locking collar, so once you get it dialed in, you can lock it so it doesn't move on you anymore. But, you know, most of the stuff I use, like I said, it depends on what I'm doing. If I'm driving out to a park, getting out of my truck and going to a picnic table that's 20 feet away, I'm probably not bringing, I mean, I might just for fun bring some little tiny stuff, but I'm probably bringing a more substantial setup, right? I'm probably bringing the full-size vertical and maybe a 100-watt radio, or maybe one of my 10-watt all-mode rigs, right? If I'm doing a deep hike in POTA, or like I said, a SOTA, I'm not carrying these big, I mean, I'll carry the KX2 up a mountain, I have, but I'm not carrying an 891 or a G90 or anything like that. It's just, I could, but I mean, my pack, when I pack a pack for SOTA, I assume the worst. So if I'm going someplace where I'm gonna be in the middle of nowhere, I make sure I've got enough stuff to spend the night without dying. So in a pinch, if I got stuck there, I've got everything I need to not die for the night. So if I'm going in the winter, that's a lot of stuff. Even in the summer, you think about it, you're in the Adirondacks or the Catskills, and you're up at the top of a mountain. It might be 80 degrees during the day at the base of the mountain. It might be 40 degrees at the summit at night. If you've got no insulation and nothing to keep you up off the ground, you're gonna die, right? So I pack stuff that people are like, why do you bring that with you? Just in case. Like, I always have 2 tourniquets with me. People are like, why 2? Because 1 may not be enough. And if 1's not enough, and if I'm by myself and I need a tourniquet, I need a tourniquet right now. I'm not improvising one. I'm not calling 911 because there may not be cell service. I'll talk about that in a second. But I carry stuff that people are like, what are you doing, man? I don't want to have, if I needed something like that, I need it now, right? So when I pack a kit for that kind of stuff, some of the gear weighs some weight. So I keep the radio kit as light as I can so that I can keep all that other stuff with me. I'm a pretty, like I said before, I'm a pretty avid outdoorsman, so I have a lot of outdoor skills, a lot of bushcraft skills. I mean, I can start a bow drill fire. I can, I can use a chert on the spine of my knife to create sparks and start a fire with char cloth. I know how to do all those things. I don't want to have to. I want to bring that stuff with me so that I don't have to rely on those skills. If I'm making a bow drill fire to keep myself alive, things have gone 10 shades of sideways, all right? So, like I said, I try to keep my kit as light as I can. Now, like I said, when I'm doing like a drive-up activation, so this is a Bengali Expedition. This is an expensive key. This is my field key for when I'm doing like a drive-up. So like if I'm going to, let's say I go down to Hickory's Park and pull into the pavilion and do a POTA activation from down there, I'm probably bringing this key, right? But if I'm hiking way out in the middle of nowhere, I'm not bringing, that key weighs 3.5 pounds, right? I'm not bringing that. This key, get it out of the box here, probably doesn't even weigh an ounce. All right? Right, so like, and I've got smaller. So I'm gonna make everybody dizzy on the camera, sorry, Drew. So this is an N6 ARA tiny paddle. This is one of my backup keys for when because I've had keys fail in the field. That's the whole key, all right? So if things fail and I need a backup key, I need a backup key. And believe it or not, I can send remarkably good code on that little tiny key. But, like I said, some of this gear is very specialized. It's not the kind of stuff that normal people, and I'm not normal, would buy. But if you're doing this kind of stuff and you're, like I said, you're hiking way up a mountain or something like that, ounces matter, right? So, all right, Drew, could you hop back over to the presentation there? There we go. So let's talk about some tips, all right? And then I've got plenty of time for questions and answers. If anybody wants to see anything, play with anything, let me know. So some tips. So if you're new to this, get on the air. The sooner, the better. This especially goes for CW. The sooner you're on the air, the sooner you will become proficient. Don't have key fright or mic fright for you phone guys, all right? Nobody's judging you. Nobody knows who you are on the other end unless they look you up on QRZ, whatever. But they still don't know who you are, right?
Just put Ford's picture on your.
There you go, perfect. Everybody's Ford Drake. So people are like, oh, but my code's not perfect. Nobody cares. Mine isn't either. I make mistakes all the time. And I leave all of that mess in all of my videos because I want people to understand none of us are perfect, right? I'm a pretty good CW op, and I make all sorts of mistakes. We all do. We all misspell words. We all miscopy stuff. We all miss call signs. Everybody does it. Don't worry about sounding stupid. Get on the air. So if you're a new op, be it a brand new technician with an HT, start talking to people. If you've been a ham for 40 years, but you're just getting into CW and you're really worried about sounding stupid, you don't. Just the fact that you're on the air. So CW ops, like I said, we love to work new people. I'm not judging you. My first thought is, yes, another CW operator. Not, wow, this guy's fist sucks. It's, okay, cool, another person who's on the air on CW. All right, we're not judging you. Practice, practice, practice. Everything from learning CW to setting up a field expedient antenna to managing pileups takes practice. You don't get good at this stuff right away. The first time you get in a pileup, be it phone or CW, it is scary. You're like, what is this mess? You learn to manage it. All right, you learn how to pull calls out. You learn skills that make managing those things easier. Setting up antennas, the first time you set an antenna up in the field, you're gonna be messing with it and trying to get the throw line in the tree or tuning up one of these stupid antennas for an hour. The time to learn that is not the first time you go out in the field. Set this stuff up in your backyard and tune it. I cannot tell you how long I spent on these verticals getting my radial fields. So Ford asked me earlier about radials, because I actually this morning on the net, Ford said, you know, he had a question about my radials, because normally on a vertical antenna, you want your radials to be a quarter wavelength. And what I found is if they're on the ground, it doesn't matter. I found that the more radials I have on the ground, the better the antenna works. If they're elevated, they have to be tuned. You don't just elevate the radials and make it work. They need to be tuned. So if you're gonna, now the antenna works infinitely better with tuned elevated radials. It's way more efficient. Also a lot more work to set up and a lot fiddlier. All right, so I like simple. I like to take my radials, so like, I've got 2 sets of these. So that's 6 17-foot, you can give you, sorry, Drew. That's 6 17-foot radials all attached to the same connector. These are made out of silicone jacketed wire so they don't tangle. I take these hair ties off of here and I just chuck these out. And they spread out. And then you take your fingers and you rake them out. My radial field's set up. There's no tuning, no nothing. It's just ready to go. All right? You'll get to the point where once you've practiced this stuff enough and gotten everything tuned up to so you know how it works, it's effortless. The first time you do it, it's a nightmare. The second time you do it, it's a little easier. By the time you've done it 100 times, you can do it with your eyes closed. But like I said, the first time you do it shouldn't be in the field. Practice this stuff in your backyard or your side yard or wherever it is you're going to practice. Have an antenna analyzer. Get that antenna up. Look at, like if you're using a wire antenna, move it up and down and watch what happens to the SWR, right? Because that ground conductivity is going to change that antenna. It's going to change where it's tuned. It's going to change your SWR. It's going to change all these things, right? All of those things are going to make a difference. You know, so really practice with all your stuff. Ask questions, but verify the validity of the answers. There's a lot of garbage out there. Don't take anything as gospel. I'm going to tell you right now, I am not an expert. All right? I'm just a guy who plays radio. There are people that know way more about this stuff than I ever will. Be careful about what you listen to. I can only speak, I'm not an RF engineer. I didn't study antennas my entire life. I know what works in practice because I've done it. But people have done so much more than I ever will. Listen to them. They know what they're talking about. Now you may find that one thing says theory should do this, and in reality it does this. I found that, well, they said it should be this long. Nope. So like, that end-fed half wave is not as long as it should be. I cut it to what I thought it should be, and it was too long. And I kept cutting wire off. Well, actually what I kept folding it back and twisting it around itself until I got the right length. And it was like 14 or 15 inches shorter than it should be. All right, I did the math. I knew how long it's supposed to be. Nope. All right, so you're going to find in practice things don't always pan out the way theory says. That's why you've got to play with this stuff. Learn how to troubleshoot your gear on the fly. This stuff will fail on you at the worst time. I had a tree branch fall on an antenna mid-activation and sever the wire. I've had radio stop transmitting. I've had, you know, keys fail in the field. All right, learn how to troubleshoot that stuff on the fly. I'll be working a pile up and something fails. That's like the worst time. I want to be able to get back on the air as fast as I can. So the more you understand your gear, the better off you're going to be. Always bring spares. Carry 2. Unless you're doing something where weight really counts, bring 2 of everything. If I'm going to be less than a mile from my truck, I'm going to have 2 rigs, 2 keys, 2 batteries, 2 antennas, 2 everything. Because Murphy is going to come along and mess with your day, and you're going to need that other antenna or key or cable. Or I did an activation a month or 2 back. I had a piece of coax fail. Expensive piece of ABR, 218 XATC. All right, and I hooked it up to my Wolf River Coils vertical, tried to tune it up, and no matter what I did, it was 14-1. Well, crap. So I had my 891 with me, which has got it's SO239 PL259, right? That's what this coax is. So I said, well, I got a piece with BNCs. I try to make everything I have BNC. The only radios I don't are my 100-watt HF radios. I convert everything to BNC, and I'm like, oh, I'll use my BNC coax. I only had one BNC to PL259 or SO239. I thought I had 2. I only had 1. I went, but I had the KX2 with me. So I just swapped rigs. Have 2 of everything, all right? Really learn what propagation is like at different times of day or different times of the year at different bands. Learn how your antenna performs in the real world and observe what things affect it. I've had so many people tell me, I can't ever hear anybody, or I'll call CQ for an hour. What band were you on? Well, I was on 10 meters. Was 10 meters open? Well, it was the day. Oh, okay, cool, but was it open, right? Or, they'll be on 40 meters, middle of the day, trying to make contacts, and they're like, man, all I can get is New York. Duh, do it at 9 o'clock at night at 40 meters and see what happens, right? So you get a lot of people who, and I'm not knocking anybody, but it takes practice to learn this stuff. And the bands change on the fly. Band might be open, especially those higher bands, 10, 12, 15. It might be open, you might be running, all of a sudden it's gone. You get a solar flare, whatever, and it's just gone, right? So really learn what that stuff is like. If you're a CW operator, the reverse beacon network is an amazing tool. Is everybody familiar with the RBN? If you're not, the reverse beacon network is a network of exactly what it sounds like, beacons that hear your call and report back on the internet. So if I hop on a radio right now and I call CQ and my call sign, it'll get picked up by skimmers all over the world, and then it'll get reported back to me, and it'll plot it on a map, including the signal noise ratio. Okay, so not only do I see where I'm being heard, but how strong I'm being heard. So what I'll do before I leave the house is I'll go, okay, let's see what bands are open and what my SNRs look like. I'll start on 40 and I'll go all the way up the bands. And I'll call CQ on whatever power I'm gonna run on the field and see what my signal to noise ratio looks like on each band and how far out I'm getting. Then I kind of know where I wanna start. But again, best laid plans, you get out in the field and there's been a solar flare and now I've gotta change bands or change plans, right? Learn to know if the angry sun gods are gonna completely ruin your day. Learn how to look at the solar weather and understand what's actually happening with the sun, right? I can't tell you how many times I've had my day ruined by the sun, but have a contingency plan. But don't let the angry sun gods ruin your day. Go make some QSOs anyway. And finally, have fun, right? This is about having fun. If you're not having fun, why are you doing it? So at the end of the day, like I said, I enjoy low power stuff because it's a challenge and because I don't have to carry much. I see guys, these huge rolling bins with, huge banks of batteries and all of this crap. And I'm like, I got this little Pelican case. I'm gonna do the exact same thing you are. Do you really need, you'll find if you do portable operations where you're carrying the gear, you'll find out what you really need and what you don't. Just like anything else, right? So with that being said, hopefully that was at least a little informative. If anybody's got any questions, I can stick around as long as you guys need me. If you want to play with anything, be my guest. Go ahead, Ford.
Okay, you mentioned about the POTA and the soda.
Yep.
And one of the things that, like if you've heard in the morning, we get talking about, how about with the rangers and in these parks and whatnot?
So the only problem I've ever had is Mike at Shenango Valley. And he wasn't mean. He came over and he said, what are you doing? And I told him, and he's like, you really need a permit for this, and I really don't want you setting this up. I have vertical setup. I didn't have anything in the trees or anything. And he wasn't mean about it, but I could tell he didn't really want me there. We were talking about that before the meeting, and I think maybe the right approach is maybe some of us go to talk to the park people and say, hey, look, this is what we're doing. This is what things do you want from us, or if you're going to allow us to do this, what do you need from us? What rules do we need to follow? And we need to show them the benefit. This is going to bring people to the park, right? Like, people watch my videos and they're like, I've had people email me, holy cow, I saw an activation from this park. I didn't even know that park existed.